Good evening. My name is Marie Delorme. I'm delighted to be here with you. I would like to propose that the true art of conversation lies in our ability to elevate it to an art form where silence is unacceptable. When we seek knowledge, when we're informed, we have a moral and a social obligation to speak on behalf of those who do not have a voice. The true art of conversation is revealed when we change the conversation. And changing the conversation requires courage. The courage to face censure, the courage to be a maverick, and the ability to question one's own belief and to change those beliefs. I'm often asked to shed light on the very complex issue of Canada's relationship with its Indigenous people. And those issues are a little bit like the layers of an onion. When you peel the layers of an onion, there's multiple dimensions, and sometimes when we're peeling onions, we cry. But too often, that discourse is shaped by the media. And the media, unfortunately, generally tends to give us information in sound bites. And the media has a tendency to focus on that which is provocative, and not necessarily tell the story behind the story. And the question that I am asked most often about this complex relationship is why the socioeconomic condition of Indigenous people in our country still has not changed in this day and age. And it's a valid question. And the discourse on this long and complicated relationship tends to be dominated by issues of poverty, of residential school, incarceration, dropout rates, highest suicide rate in the world. And all of that is accurate. I work in communities from coast to coast to coast. And whenever I'm in a community, I ask the local Indigenous people what their word for poverty is. Do you know that there is no word for poverty in any of our Indigenous languages in our country? And the simple reason is this, because historically, in the time before contact, poverty did not exist. So I'd like to borrow a phrase from the late Paul Harvey. And now for the rest of the story. Or maybe there's a different story that we can tell. While not marginalizing or minimizing the very real social issues that Indigenous people are facing, there is another story that is not told, and it's another conversation that has to be had. It's a conversation that helps us bring balance to this discussion. And it starts with this. There are over 40,000 of us who own our own businesses in Canada. Over 30,000 of our young people are in post-secondary institutions. We are lawyers and doctors and entrepreneurs and scientists and social activists. And these are the stories that also need to be told. And I would suggest that it is time that the conversation shifts from categorizing Indigenous people as a liability to seeing them as an asset, to celebrating the very rich historical and contemporary contributions that Indigenous people have made that form the threads of the tapestry that we describe as our country, Canada. Indigenous ways of knowing, Indigenous ways of being in medicine and science and technology have existed since time immemorial. And perhaps we're at a point now in this time of healing and reconciliation when we might actually be able to find a way to acknowledge and honor the past with all of its imperfections and its injustices. But to truly repair the damage, we have to look to the future, not to the past. We cannot change what has come before, but what we can do is we can take the past and we can learn from it to inform the future. True reconciliation is about changing the conversation. It's changing it from a deficit model to a model of abundance. It's a model where all sides do not have to give up something, but where everybody gains. And how is this done? Well, you know, it is pretty simple. It starts with respect, love, honesty, wisdom, humility, truth, and courage. These are the 7 sacred teachings, and they are the natural laws, and these natural laws transcend race, belief systems, and the color of our skin. Reconciliation is about the restoration of relationships, and it's really hard work. It's hard work for everybody involved in it. But it starts with recognizing and honoring what has come before. It's grounded in regret and in restitution, and true reconciliation requires forgiveness. And forgiveness is not forgetting that an injustice has been done. It's this understanding that allows us to find our freedom and our peace. Because it's in our deepest pain that we find the power that allows us to reach our full potential. And it's in the freedom that we find our ability to be at peace. And the art of conversation is grounded in storytelling, and storytelling is something that transcends every race, every country. It is in our stories that we find that we are more alike than we are different. In traditional Indigenous cultures, storytelling is marked by the gifting of tobacco, of gifts, and it's the respect of listening when another is holding the talking stick. And I've been thinking that there is another conversation that we need to change in our country, and that is the conversation around newcomers. And too many of the conversations that I am hearing are informed by fear and sometimes even hatred. But we sometimes forget that over the past 500 years, we've welcomed refugees to this country. Some of those refugees were seeking safety, but many of our ancestors were also seeking economic security. So how do we change that conversation? Well, the reality is that most newcomers to this country are seeking to be self-sufficient. And the other reality is that many of the newcomers do so in the first year. 2 weeks ago, I was in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and there is a family in Antigonish that settled there about a year ago, and they are the Haddad family from Syria. They owned a chocolate factory in Syria, and that factory was bombed, and the family fled the country. They have set up a factory with the help of the people from Antigonish who helped them get settled, and this factory is, well, it's more of a garden shed, actually. It's about the size of 2 garden sheds, and they are producing chocolates that would rival the best chocolates in the world. The name of their company is Peace by Chocolate. And if you have to check out their website, the front page quotes the father, and he says this: "I came here just for my family to have a bright future." And the tagline of their company name, under Peace by Chocolate, it says, "One piece won't hurt." So we need to move forward on this time of reconciliation, and we need to do so on a number of levels. The French philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said this. He said, "Perhaps after harnessing space, the winds, the tides, and gravitation, we shall harness the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in history, we shall have discovered fire." You know, our thoughts create our realities. We can create heaven and hell in our minds, and our words can create heaven or hell for others. So let's change that conversation. Let's elevate it to an art form where silence and inaction is unacceptable. Let's change it to an art form that is characterized by critical thinking and curiosity and an openness to listening and learning, to a place where, when we have knowledge, silence is unacceptable. Thank you.